I thought I had finally found peace. 7 years after the messiest breakup of my life, I was living in a comfortable apartment in Austin, working as a software engineer, spending my weekends hiking and learning guitar. Life felt stable, controlled. Then one Saturday evening, as I was preparing dinner, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my ex-girlfriend standing there with a little girl clutching her hand. The child had dark curly hair and shy eyes. Before I could even process what I was seeing, my ex spoke. "This is your daughter. You owe me 7 years of child support." My mind went blank. The timeline did not make sense. The last time we were together was at least 3 months before we broke up, and this child looked about 6 years old. Something was very, very wrong. Before we get into what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. And hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is going to show you exactly why you should never let guilt or pressure make you accept responsibility without solid proof. Trust me, you will want to hear how this ends. Let me back up and explain how I got to this point. My name is Angel, and I am in my early 30s now. For the past few years, life has been pretty good. I work at a mid-sized tech company in Austin, Texas. The job is stable, the pay is decent, and I actually enjoy what I do. My apartment is modest but comfortable. I spent a lot of time decorating it carefully after years of just trying to get by. On weekends, I go hiking in the nearby trails, cook meals. I actually plan out, instead of just grabbing takeout and practice guitar. I started learning about 2 years ago, and while I am not great, I can play a few songs now. My dating life has been casual, nothing serious. I have been focused on personal growth, building the kind of life I want. Financially, things finally feel secure. I paid off my student loans last year, which was a huge relief. I have been saving up, planning my first real vacation to Colorado. Life feels calm, peaceful. It is the complete opposite of where I was 7 years ago. Back then, I was a different person. I met Stephanie at a college party during my junior year. We hit it off immediately. There was chemistry, shared interests in music and outdoor activities. The relationship lasted about 1.5 years. At first, everything seemed great. We spent hours talking, went on road trips, made plans for after graduation. But gradually things started to change. Stephanie became secretive with her phone. She would angle it away from me when texting or leave the room to take calls. I noticed she was going out more late nights with vague explanations about study groups or meeting friends I had never heard of. When I asked about it, she would get defensive, accuse me of being controlling or paranoid. The trust between us started cracking. The end came suddenly. One evening I was at her apartment. She had left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she was in the shower. A message notification popped up, and I glanced over without thinking. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was a message from a guy clearly flirtatious, referencing plans they had made. I knew I should not have, but I clicked through. There were weeks of messages. She had been seeing someone else, a guy she met at her gym. The messages were intimate, planning meetups, talking about how much they missed each other. I felt sick. When she came out of the bathroom, I confronted her. She saw the laptop and her face went pale. The fight that followed was terrible. There were tears, accusations flying both ways. She blamed me for being too boring, not spontaneous enough. She said I was suffocating her. I told her I could not believe she had lied to me for months. It got ugly fast. We said things we could not take back. By the end of that night, we were done. We went our separate ways completely. I blocked her number, unfriended her on social media, cut off all contact. Our mutual friends mostly stayed out of it. It was just over. The months after that breakup were hard. I felt betrayed, stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. I went to therapy, which helped. I focused on finishing school, threw myself into my coursework. Slowly, I started to heal. I graduated, landed a job, and moved to Austin for a fresh start. Over the next 7 years, I dated other people, made new friends, built a career. Stephanie became a distant memory, someone from a different chapter of my life that I had closed. I thought about her occasionally, usually just wondering vaguely how she was doing, but I had moved on. I never expected to hear from her again. Then that Saturday night happened, and everything I had built suddenly felt threatened. When I opened the door and saw Stephanie standing there, my first reaction was confusion. She looked older, more tired than I remembered. The little girl beside her was half hiding behind her leg, looking scared and uncertain. Stephanie did not waste time on pleasantries. Her voice was sharp, almost angry. "We need to talk. Now." I just stood there, trying to process what was happening. It had been 7 years. Why was she here? I made the mistake of inviting them inside. I figured whatever this was, we should not have the conversation in the hallway where neighbors could hear. Once inside, Stephanie launched into her story. She said she found out she was pregnant, right after we broke up. She claimed she tried to contact me, but I had blocked her everywhere so she could not reach me. She said she made the decision to raise the child alone, that she struggled financially for years, working multiple jobs, barely making rent. Now she was at a breaking point. She had recently lost her job. She had an eviction notice. The child, Maya, needed medical care they could not afford. She pulled out her phone and showed me a calculator with a number that made my head spin. Over $60,000. That was what she said I owed her for 7 years of child support. My mind was racing. I looked at the little girl sitting quietly on my couch, playing with a stuffed animal she had brought. She seemed sweet, innocent, caught up in something she did not understand. But the math was not adding up. I did the calculations quickly in my head. The last time Stephanie and I were intimate was at least 3 months before we broke up. Our breakup happened in March of that year. If she got pregnant right after the baby would have been born around December or January. But she was claiming this child was 6 years old. If that timeline was correct, the child would have been conceived in June or July, months after we had already split. I voiced my doubts immediately. "The timeline does not make sense, Stephanie. We had not been together for months before you got pregnant, if this child is really 6. Stephanie's reaction was explosive. Her eyes filled with tears, and her voice got louder. "How can you deny your own daughter? How can you stand there and question me after everything I have been through?" She pulled out her phone again and started showing me photos. Pictures of a baby, a toddler, birthday parties. I named her Maya. I always loved that name. Remember, she was right. We had talked about baby names once, hypothetically, late at night, when we were still happy. Maya was a name I had mentioned liking. She was using that memory as proof, as if remembering a conversation meant I had to be the father. She kept going, describing in detail how hard it had been. The sleepless nights, the money struggles, the times she had to choose between paying rent or buying groceries. She painted a picture of herself as a martyr, suffering alone while I lived my comfortable life. She demanded I pay her at least $5,000 immediately, as good faith, while we worked out the rest. She said if I did not, she would take me to court, get a lawyer, make my life hell. I felt the pressure building. Part of me felt guilty. What if I was wrong? What if somehow the timeline was off, and this child was mine? But a bigger part of me knew something was not right. I held firm. I need proof. A DNA test. The room went silent for a moment. Then, Stephanie exploded again. "You are calling me a liar. After everything I just told you. After 7 years of raising your daughter alone." She stood up and Maya started crying, picking up on the tension. Stephanie used it, gesturing at the crying child. "Look what you are doing to her. She just wants to know her father, and you are treating us like criminals." I felt terrible seeing the little girl upset, but I could not let emotion override logic. "I am not saying you are lying. I am saying I need proof before I accept responsibility. If she is mine, I will do the right thing. But I need to know for sure." Stephanie grabbed Maya's hand and headed for the door. She was furious. "Fine. You will hear from my lawyer. She slammed the door behind her, but not before shoving a piece of paper with her number into my hand. The next few days were a nightmare. Stephanie did not just leave it between us. She reached out to mutual friends from college, people I had not talked to in years. She told them her version of the story, painting herself as a desperate single mother, and me as a deadbeat dad who refused to help his own child. My phone started lighting up with messages. Some people were genuinely concerned, asking if it was true. Others were accusatory right from the start. Dude, seriously, take care of your kid. I never thought you would be that kind of guy, Angel. A former roommate called me, and I could hear the disappointment in his voice. Man, just do the right thing. Do not make this harder on her. Even people who knew about our toxic breakup seemed to side with Stephanie. The narrative of struggling single mother versus guy with good job was powerful. It did not matter that I was asking reasonable questions. Social media made it worse. Stephanie started posting vague things on Facebook, photos of Maya, with captions about how hard it was to do everything alone. Some people walk away from their responsibilities and never look back. She never named me directly, but people who knew us both could figure it out. I started getting looks at work. A colleague pulled me aside one day and awkwardly asked if everything was okay at home. Rumors were spreading. My reputation was taking hits in real time. My mother called after someone from her church group mentioned seeing something online. She was worried and confused. I had to explain the whole situation to her and my family. They were supportive, but I could hear the concern in their voices. My mom said, "Angel, if there is any chance this child is yours, you need to know. But you are right to ask for proof. Get the test done quickly and settle this." The pressure was coming from every direction. Part of me wondered if I should just pay something to make it go away, but I knew that was wrong. If I gave in now without proof, I would be admitting to something that might not even be true. I would be trapped. I could not sleep. I kept reviewing the timeline over and over. The last time Stephanie and I were intimate was definitely around December of that year. We broke up in March. If she got pregnant from me, the baby would have been born around September at the earliest. But she was claiming Maya was born in June, which would mean conception happened around September of the previous year. We were still together then, but barely. I remembered that time period. Stephanie had just started going to the gym regularly. That was January. She met that guy there. The timeline was pointing to him, not me. I started digging online. I looked up Stephanie's social media profiles. Most were set to private now, but I found a few old photos that were still public. One from about 5 years ago showed her with a different man. They looked like a couple. Friends had commented, "You two are so cute together," and finally found a good one. I took a screenshot. It was not proof of anything, but it suggested she had been in other relationships. There were no photos of Maya, until very recently, which I found strange. Most parents filled their social media with kid photos. Why had she hidden this child for years? I texted Stephanie directly. "I will pay for the DNA test. We can do it at a professional lab. If Maya is mine, I will take full responsibility. But I need scientific proof, not just your word." Her response came an hour later. "You do not trust me. After I came to you for help, this is unbelievable." She tried the guilt trip again, talking about how Maya asked about her daddy, how confusing this was for the child. I stayed firm. Test first. I will not bond with a child who might not be mine. That would not be fair to anyone. After more back and forth, she finally agreed, but reluctantly. She added conditions. She wanted me to meet Maya properly, first spend time with her, so the child could know her father, before all this clinical stuff. I refused. Test first. That is non-negotiable. We scheduled an appointment at a reputable DNA testing center for the following Thursday. I felt a mix of anxiety and relief. Soon I would have answers. Thursday morning arrived. I woke up early, could not eat breakfast. My stomach was in knots. I drove to the testing center and got there 15 minutes early. The facility was clean, professional, clinical. It helped calm my nerves a little. Stephanie showed up late with Maya. She was clearly annoyed, barely made eye contact with me. Maya looked confused, kept asking her mom why they were there. Stephanie told her it was just a doctor's visit. The testing process itself was simple. A technician took cheek swabs from me and Maya. The little girl was cooperative, even smiled at the technician. She seemed like a sweet kid. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Regardless of what the results would say, she was innocent in all this adult mess. The technician explained that results would come back in 3 to 5 business days. They would email both Stephanie and me at the same time. Outside the clinic, Stephanie tried one more time. Her tone was softer now, almost pleading. You know you could just trust me, and we could work this out now. We do not need to wait for some test to tell us what we already know. I looked at her carefully. I will wait for the results. She shook her head, took Maya's hand, and walked to her car. I drove home feeling drained. The worst part was the waiting. I knew it would be at least 3 days, maybe longer. Those 3 days felt like the longest of my life. I could not focus at work. My mind kept running through scenarios. What if the child was mine? How had I missed this? What if she was not? Why would Stephanie lie so elaborately? I checked my email constantly, obsessively. Every notification made my heart jump. Wednesday night, I could not sleep at all. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, going over everything again and again. Thursday morning, I was up at 6. I made coffee and sat at my laptop, refreshing my email every few minutes. At 8:47, it arrived. The subject line read, DNA test results case number 74,829. My hands were shaking as I clicked it open. There was an attached PDF. I downloaded it and started reading through the clinical language, the explanations of methodology, the genetic markers. I scrolled down to the conclusion section. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I saw it. Bold text that said probability of paternity 0.00%. Below that, the tested man is excluded as the biological father. I read it 3 times to make sure I was understanding correctly. 0%. Not 99%. Not even 50%. 0. I was not the father. A wave of emotions hit me all at once. Relief, because I had been right to question this. Anger, because Stephanie had lied and tried to manipulate me. Vindication, because I had stood my ground despite all the pressure. I immediately called Stephanie. It went straight to voicemail. I texted her. Got the results. We need to talk. Now. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, around 11, my phone rang. It was her. Her voice sounded shaky, defensive, before I even said anything. I did not give her a chance to start. The test came back. 0% probability. I am not the father, Stephanie. There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "Those tests can be wrong sometimes." I almost laughed at how absurd that was. No, they cannot be wrong. Not with 0% probability. You lied to me. You tried to scam me out of $60,000. She started to break down on the phone. First, she tried more excuses. Maybe the lab made a mistake. Maybe they switched samples. But I pressed her, and slowly the truth started coming out. The real father was a guy she dated after me. They were together for about a year. When she got pregnant, he wanted nothing to do with it. He disappeared, refused to help financially. She had been struggling on her own for years, working whatever jobs she could find, barely keeping her head above water. Recently, she lost her job at a retail store. She was facing eviction. She was desperate. Then she remembered me. She knew I had a good job now that I was doing well. She thought if she could convince me the child was mine, I might help out of guilt or obligation. I was desperate, Angel. I did not know what else to do. I have been drowning for years. I felt a flash of sympathy, but it was quickly overwhelmed by anger. So you thought you would ruin my life instead. You tried to extort $60,000 from me. You turned people against me. You made me look like a deadbeat father to everyone we know. She was crying now, saying she was sorry that she made a terrible mistake. She said she knew it was wrong, but she did not see any other way out. I told her I was contacting a lawyer. What you did is fraud, Stephanie. It is illegal. I could press charges. She panicked immediately. Please do not. Please. If I get in legal trouble, they will take Maya away from me. I will lose her. She is all I have. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to make her face consequences for what she tried to do. But another part of me thought about that little girl who had done nothing wrong and did not deserve to lose her mother. I called an attorney friend and explained the situation. He told me I had grounds to pursue charges for attempted fraud and could also sue for defamation based on the false claims she had spread. I thought about it carefully. In the end, I decided I would not press criminal charges, but only for Maya's sake. That child deserved stability, not more trauma. But I gave Stephanie a list of demands. First, she had to post a public retraction and apology. Second, she had to contact every single person she had told her lies to and admit the truth. Third, she had to stay away from me permanently. If she ever contacted me again for any reason, I would prosecute. Fourth, I urged her to go after the real father legally. It was not my problem anymore, but that child deserved support from her actual father. Stephanie agreed to everything. She was in no position to argue. That weekend, she posted on Facebook. It was a long post admitting she had made a mistake, that I was not Maya's father, and apologizing for the false accusations. She did not go into detail about the attempted fraud, but she cleared my name publicly. People started reaching out to me. Some of our mutual friends apologized, said they should not have jumped to conclusions. Others defended Stephanie, saying she was just a desperate mother trying to survive, that I should have compassion. I blocked those people. I realized through this whole experience who my real friends were. The ones who stood by me, or at least asked for my side, before judging those, were the people worth keeping in my life. As for Stephanie, I told her in our final conversation that I genuinely hoped she found help. I meant it. I was not angry anymore, just tired. But I made it crystal clear that our paths would never cross again. The weeks after the results came back were strange. My life slowly returned to normal. But I felt different. My reputation was restored among the people who mattered. Some relationships were damaged permanently. People who showed they were quick to judge without facts. I was okay with that. At work, colleagues who had heard the rumors now knew the truth. My boss pulled me aside one day and said, "Good for you for standing your ground. A lot of people would have caved under that pressure." My mother called and told me she was proud of how I handled the situation. "You protected yourself and did it with dignity," she said. That meant a lot to me. I took that Colorado trip I had been planning. I needed the space needed to get away and process everything that had happened. The mountains gave me perspective. While I was hiking through alpine meadows, breathing the thin air, I thought about how close I had come to disaster. If I had given in to the guilt and pressure, if I had just paid that first $5,000 to make her go away, I would have been trapped. I would have been admitting to being the father. She would have kept coming back for more. $60,000 would have been just the beginning. I could have ended up paying for years, supporting a child who was not mine, all because I did not demand proof. The thought made me sick, but it also made me grateful. I had trusted my instincts. I had stood firm, even when everyone was telling me I was wrong. I thought about Stephanie a lot during that trip and in the months after. Not with anger anymore, but with a kind of sad understanding. She had been desperate. Desperation makes people do things they would never normally consider. She saw a way out of her impossible situation and took it, even though it meant lying and manipulating someone who had once cared about her. I do not think she is a fundamentally bad person. I think she was drowning and grabbed at whatever lifeline she could reach, even if that lifeline was actually a person she was trying to pull under with her. That does not excuse what she did. She tried to trap an innocent person, ruin my reputation, and extract money through lies. But I could understand the desperation that led her there. I also thought about Maya often. I hoped she was okay. I hoped Stephanie would find legitimate help, that she would go after the real father and get the support she was legally entitled to. I hoped that little girl would grow up with some stability and security. She deserved better than being used as a pawn in her mother's desperate scheme. The whole experience taught me that empathy and boundaries can exist at the same time. I could feel sorry for someone's situation while still refusing to be manipulated by it. Compassion does not mean letting people hurt you. Understanding someone's pain does not mean you have to sacrifice yourself to fix it. The biggest lessons I learned came from the whole ordeal. First and most important, trust, but verify. It sounds cynical, but it is not. It is just realistic. When someone makes a claim that will fundamentally change your life, you have every right to demand proof. Never accept responsibility for something without verification, no matter how guilty someone tries to make you feel. Guilt is a powerful weapon, and some people, especially when desperate, will weaponize it. They will use your compassion, your sense of decency, your fear of being seen as a bad person. Do not let them. Standing up for yourself, demanding evidence, setting boundaries. These things are not cruel. They are necessary. Some people will judge you for protecting yourself. They will say you lack empathy or that you are being cold. Those people's opinions do not matter. The ones who really care about you will support you doing the right thing even when it is hard. I also learned that past relationships can resurface in unexpected ways. You think something is done, closed, finished. Then years later it can come back and threaten everything you have built. That is why it is important to handle endings as cleanly as possible when you can. But even clean endings can get messy later, and that is not your fault. You cannot control other people's choices. You can only control how you respond. I was proud of how I responded. I stayed calm. I did not get swept up in emotion. I demanded evidence instead of accepting someone's word. I did not cave to social pressure or guilt. I protected my future self, and that was the right choice. Months later, I am stronger than I was before. I feel more confident in my judgment. I am better at setting boundaries, at saying no when something does not feel right. I am dating again, but I am more careful now. I pay attention to red flags earlier. I am not cynical about relationships, but I am realistic. I know that people are capable of lying, of manipulating even people you once cared about. That does not mean everyone will, but it means you have to protect yourself. Life has continued in its normal rhythm. Work projects, guitar lessons, weekend hikes. But something fundamental shifted inside me. There is a deeper sense of self-worth now, a knowledge that I can stand firm under pressure, that I will not sacrifice my truth for a false sense of peace. I sometimes wonder what my life would look like if I had made a different choice. If I had just paid that first $5,000 to make Stephanie go away. If I had accepted her story without question because it was easier than fighting, I would be trapped right now, in an elaborate lie, supporting a child who is not mine out of misplaced guilt. Every month, I would be sending money, wondering how I got here, resenting a situation I could never escape. Instead, I am free. Free because I demanded the truth even when it was uncomfortable, even when people judged me for it. If anyone listening to this is in a similar situation, my message to you is simple. Do not let anyone guilt you into accepting their version of reality without proof. Your compassion is valuable. Your willingness to help others is a good quality. But do not let it be exploited. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is say no. Sometimes protecting yourself is not selfish, it is survival. The truth might be uncomfortable, It might involve conflict and difficult conversations, but it is always better than living in a comfortable lie. That doorbell ringing 7 years later could have destroyed everything I had built. Instead, it taught me about my own strength. It showed me I could face pressure and not break. And that knowledge that confidence was worth every uncomfortable moment. So what would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had someone from your past show up with a life-changing claim? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be facing pressure to accept something without proof. Thank you for watching. And remember, your truth matters more than anyone else's comfort. Stand firm, demand evidence, and never apologize for protecting yourself. Until next time, take care of yourselves out there.